Kirby's Return to Dreamland marks his return to something much grander: platforming. After all, it's been 5 years since his last proper platformer in Kirby Squeak Squad, and more than 10 since his last true console appearance, and no, Epic Yarn doesn't count. Needless to say, Kirby's Return to Dreamland is bringing with it some, shall we say, inflated expectations. At its core, everything that you would expect in a true Kirby platformer is accounted for. Sucking and blowing, flying, copying, it's all here and plays almost exactly as you remember. You even hold the Wii Remote NES style. It's classic Kirby through and through, right down to the very deliberate pace that's long been a staple of the series. In fact, the only major change, and it's a big one, is that you can now play with up to 3 of your friends too. But I know what you really want to know about: the copy abilities. Well, Return to Dreamland delivers with nearly 25 unique abilities, and even more if you count the super abilities. This is a record-breaking amount, as long as you ignore Kirby 64. Come on, combining powers is cheating. Of course, many of the classics are back, such as Sword, Fire, and Cutter, but there are several new ones too, such as Water, Leaf, Whip. Aww, look, he even has a little cowboy hat! Sadly, my beloved wheel didn't make the cut. Coming to grips with the abilities is especially fun since each one feels very distinct and features a moveset even more in depth than the benchmark set by Kirby Superstar. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you'll also stumble across the occasional super copy ability, which is basically a normal copy ability on steroids. These brutal attacks will generally clear out almost every enemy on screen, as well as take down most structures. But here's the problem: they're actually pretty boring to use since it takes absolutely no skill to wield these all-destroying attacks. And even worse, only a single player can wield a super ability at a time, ensuring your friends will hate you the 20th time the game pauses so you can perform your 2 to 3 second attack. It's not a huge issue, but it does somewhat temper the pacing since you're required to use these powers if you want to finish a game 100%. Speaking of which, there are 120 hidden objects scattered throughout the world that unlock additional bonuses such as a few multiplayer minigames and copy ability challenges. They're fun to seek out and help add replayability to what is otherwise a pretty short game. Now let's touch on the game's biggest feature: co-op. You and up to 3 friends can play through the entire adventure together. Although curiously, player 1 always has to be Kirby. The other players have the choice, however, between their very own Kirby or one of his rivals: King Day-to-Day, Meta Knight, or Waddle Dee, all of whom play completely differently but are unable to use copy abilities, which is a small price to pay. Nintendo has also made it super easy to drop in or out or swap characters with a simple press of the button, making this a far more seamless cooperative experience than New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Because of the game's slower pace, I found 2 to 3 players to be ideal, as there wasn't always enough for the 4th player to do. And one unfortunate side effect of playing cooperatively is that it makes what is already a pretty easy game even easier. But honestly, as long as you're playing with others, you probably won't even notice. At its core, Kirby's Return to Dreamland is a pretty standard Kirby game, but one that is notably enhanced by playing with your friends. Unfortunately, the short quest and lacking difficulty do detract from the experience, though some endgame secrets and the hunt for collectibles should add a decent amount of replayability for those who seek it. All in all, I'm giving Kirby Returns to Dreamland 3.5 stars out of 5, as long as you play with friends. But wait, there's more. You can play by yourself too, and it's still fun, though the game's flaws do tend to stand out a little bit more when going solo. The biggest problem, quite simply, is how easy it is. This is more easily overlooked when playing with others, but it's actually kinda boring when by yourself. Fortunately, the game does get more challenging in the latter half, and becomes much more interesting for it. Now you may have noticed that I haven't even mentioned the story, and that's for a good reason. There's barely a story. Obviously, I don't expect some sweeping narrative with deep undertones from a Kirby game, but I do want, at a minimum, context and, just maybe, some character motivation. The game provides zero explanation as to why Kirby and his usual enemies are now working together, which you would think would be given a little more attention considering they've been at odds for nearly 20 years. Even worse, the game is also almost entirely antagonist-free, which draws into question who exactly the enemies you're fighting are working for. Okay, it's a small issue, and one that's easily overlooked in light of playing with friends, but it is a bit jarring when playing by yourself with little else to distract you. Last month's Kirby Mass Attack handled the story much better, providing just enough context and an actual antagonist on which a gameplay was successfully built around. Luckily, there is one perk to playing by yourself, and that's tackling the copy ability challenges. These seemingly mere short diversions can quickly become an addictive time sink as you try to perfect your run for the coveted gold medals. These are actually a lot of fun and, get this, challenging. Ultimately, Kirby's Return to Dreamland as a single-player adventure is a solid but conventional entry in the Kirby series, slightly tarnished by its overall ease, length, and complete lack of story. But there's still fun to be had here, it's just that it's even better when playing with others. Kirby's single player gets itself 3 stars out of 5. Thanks for watching our video review, and please visit GameXplain.com for our full written review, as well as additional Kirby coverage.